all CEOs, me included, we don't actually know what we're doing.
They're all sharks, so all you got to do, though, is know shark behavior.
I don't think we've ever talked about this before.
We can capture all of the wallet share.
First place you start is with the product.
That's just the first note.
This is the Capital Stack.
Hey, everybody, this is David Paul, the host of the Capital Stack podcast, where I talk to founders, operators, and investors about all things value creation in startups. Today, I'm talking to my new friend, David Freedman, who is the founder of Freestar, which is an AdTech company with over 200 employees, has never raised $1 of equity, and I think he actually might have taken a little bit of money in the beginning, but not anything real big. And he did what every smart guy does in Phoenix, which is he moved to a better spot, and which I don't blame him for. But today we're going to talk all about advertising technology. We're going to talk about company building and value creation. David, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
David, how did you get your start?
My start was just your typical entrepreneurial journey. I went to Arizona State University, and my senior year had come up with an idea of a college swimsuit calendar of all things. And the real premise behind it was a marketing vehicle for businesses to get in front of the elusive college student. We sold ads to local businesses, gave these out for free to students. And next thing you know, it really took off. At 500,000 copies at 21 schools and started driving a ton of visitors to my website. But I had no idea how to make money online and got kind of overpromised and underdelivered one too many times from people, all with the same pitch, and started to figure out the monetization side of the puzzle, so to speak. And that is what launched Freestar, was really a need to help publishers maximize their audience from a revenue standpoint and really allow them to do what they do best, which is build content, build these communities and drive traffic to their site, but then have this engine on the back end that gives them a world-class ad operations setup.
Great. And you did this at first with these poor girls that were struggling to pay for their books and wanted to, do a swimsuit calendar?
Yeah. I don't know about that. I think they were all intelligent 3.0 GPA or higher that wanted some exposure, meet some people, and get out there and have a great experience. But it really is what led to this, was kind of figuring out that it was I was that publisher that really didn't understand what I was doing from kind of driving digital revenue. And this was early 2000s when it seemed like a pipe dream that you could really make money online from advertising as well. Everything was very, very much print driven, and obviously in the world we're in today, that has made quite a shift.
Yeah, and so when you went so what was the leap and the chasm that you jumped from print to digital, and what did that kind of look like for you?
The digital was almost by accident, if you will. I mean, we had all these images at that time from kind of shooting the actual print publication. So we put them up on the site, and it just really, really took off.
Got it. Man, and so you were basically building these sites that you were really just trying to flip, right? You were trying to get a bunch of traffic to these sites and monetize them and then flip them. Because I remember that was kind of a space for a while, was these kind of building these websites, and that didn't turn out very good for you, right?
Yeah. So when I first started Freestar, the real idea was we discovered this technology that really is kind of powers what we do now, called header bidding, which basically every time an ad appears on the internet, there's a real time auction happening. So in the blink of an eye, when you see an ad on the internet, that ad's actually been auctioned off. And this header bidding technology that's become standard, we kind of had a first mover advantage. So the original idea behind the business was we were just going to buy some websites, implement this technology, increase revenue, and sell them off, kind of like flipping real estate, buying a undervalued asset and put on a new coat of paint, so to speak, and some better countertops and make a profit. And what I figured out very quickly was really not good at content, and started driving these into the ground because while I'm great at the monetization side, not great at driving the traffic on kind of just general websites. So yes, originally we pretty much pivoted to the model we are in today, which is being a fully managed solution for these publishers. We did that out of necessity of staying alive because we were about to go out of business.
I'm curious to know, like, what did those sites sell for that you were able to monetize? Like, I know you weren't, like really successful at it, but I mean, how were those things traded back in the day?
It will depend a little bit on the types of sites that they are, but I think you're usually looking at about a 3 to 5 time multiple is what I'd say a typical website will sell for.
That's pretty good on top line ad revenue.
On EBITDA.
Oh, on EBITDA. Okay, yeah, that's not so good. But I mean, how much? I mean, there wasn't a ton of. Well, I guess there was if you were making a lot of content. So I guess the last question I did is, who's powering these ad networks back then, and is it the same today? And how has the advertising technology landscape evolved since you've been in the business?
The entire advertising landscape has changed a lot. Some of the players come and go. A lot of them are still the same players, but the way they compete and the way publishers monetize is what has really changed. So originally, when I was a publisher, call it version 1.0 of ad serving, just starting a website, want to make some money, probably going to contact Google, get some AdSense code, put it on your site, and start making some money. Very simple, easy to do. And you're basically, if you don't have a lot of traffic, it's going to produce some revenue. But as your business starts to scale, what you really want is competition, right? It's think of eBay in the sense that this auction is happening every single time someone is coming to your site. So you want extra players in there competing with it and driving up the cost of these auctions. And so if version 1.0 of ad serving was just put AdSense on a site, start making some money. Version 2 was what was referred to as a waterfall setup. And this is where people would institute an ad server. Google Ad Manager being the primary ad server that controls probably 90+% of the internet. And what you would do is work with different ad networks, also referred to as SSPs. And what you would do at that time was, let's say you would work with 5 different partners. You would constantly be putting, it was referred to as a waterfall. So you would kind of pick who would be number 1, who would be number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. So I think putting this in kind of a easy to understand way, like if you were selling a car at a car auction and you had, what you would think of is, hey, this car comes up, everyone raises their hand, it goes to the highest bidder. Okay. Well, back then, really what it was favoring, saying, hey, you bought a lot of cars. I'm going to go to you first. You give me $20,000. It doesn't matter if the next person was going to pay $25,000. They had that kind of that first look. They got to take it. But if they didn't, then it would be passed back to the next person, then the next person, the next person. It's just a very inefficient auction, right? You're basically trying to use historical data to guess if that person's going to pay the most in that millisecond. So the introduction of what is referred to as header bidding, what I kind of mentioned before, is this real-time auction. What you think of as an efficient place when you have that car going up on stage and everyone raising their hand and really auctioning off to the highest bidder. So while the actual ad networks maybe come or go, and some are the same, some are reinvented or new companies, what really changed is the fact that they all needed to compete in a real-time auction in milliseconds in order to win those bids. So that was a great change for publishers because it created competition and drove up the price. And it wasn't as great for the ad networks because all of a sudden everyone's almost on an even playing field and really needing to kind of, bring their A game, so to speak.
I can't believe that you didn't think that was interesting. That was like incredibly interesting to me. Maybe I'm like an incredibly boring person. But so essentially, you had to waterfall these networks in order to go to first, second, and third on what batch of customers would bid essentially for this space or this time. And would you say that the inefficiency was a technological inefficiency, or is it just like a business model distribution inefficiency?
It was a designed by Google inefficiency. Because the one thing I didn't mention in there was Google, because they controlled the ad server. So whenever you got that highest bid, right before it would basically display that ad, Google could then come and say, you know what? that bids at, let's say $2, will pay 201. It was a second price auction where they got to pay just 1 penny higher than the highest bid. They didn't really need to have skin in the game and bid. And that's a lot of the beauty, if you will, behind the genius of Google from the advertising side of it. Is not only are they the biggest buyer of advertising, but they also control the actual auction. So some might say there's an unfair advantage there. And header bidding technology that came out, anyone can look it up. It's pre-bid is kind of the open source technology that everyone leverages. And the fact that this is open source, no one controls it, it's created a much more even playing ground. There's a antitrust lawsuit going on between the government and Google right now. Specifically, kind of a lot of that has to do around header bidding. Facebook and Google did their best to kind of kill this product off because they knew it was going to be the only thing that brought real competition to them. And it was a snowball rolling too fast downhill that just couldn't be stopped. And is really now, 90+% of websites on the internet are leveraging this technology. Google is still not part of that auction, but once again, it's putting everyone on a much more even playing field where they all actually need to compete in real time.
And now, was that because of the beauty of open source, like kind of that particular company, or was it the technology that really enabled it?
It's kind of both, but the fact that it is open source and there's no hidden agenda, there's no ownership to this. The entire industry can continue to add to
the greater good
of it and help the greater good and help solve problems together versus just being reliant on one or two companies to hopefully do what's best for everyone.
Yeah, and so despite that there's a lot more of an even playing field, there's still a big opportunity in the market for companies like yours to work with publishers and solve some of this rubric of basically monetization and efficiency within sites. So how do you offer, what are the services that you offer your customers, and how is that offering delivered?
Yeah, so what we offer is a fully managed solution. So really top to bottom, everything you need to do, monetization in a box almost, if you think of it that way, that allows publishers to go invest in journalism and engineers to kind of build this amazing website, but have the power of a world-class kind of technology behind the scenes. And I've never seen an industry move faster than the AdTech industry. What you were doing 6 months ago, there's a good chance that's outdated. So it is not a set it and forget it. And that's really one of the challenges too, is if you're not living and breathing it every single day, you're really being left behind. And I'd say outside of your top, probably, 25, 50 publishers on the internet, the CNNs of the world that can justify the amount of resources needed to really do this at a specific level. You need data scientists, machine learning, you need revenue operations, you need relationships, you need a ongoing kind of mentality of always wanting to test and continue to drive things forward, because there's so many inefficiencies in the entire digital advertising ecosystem. And while, opportunities are always arising in different ways, or new complexities or more challenges are always presenting themselves. Right now, I think everyone always continues to hear about, a cookieless world and data protection and up until today, basically, all of the marketers that they're buying ad dollars are leveraging cookies and retargeting and kind of pulling in this data to make their ad buys as efficient as possible for them. And at the end of next year, cookies are going to be completely deprecated. This is introducing a whole new kind of challenge for publishers. And that's something that's part of our responsibility of being their actual monetization partner, is everything that what I like to call is impacts the monetization ecosystem is really something that we're looking at, we're testing, and we're trying to take off their plate so they can continue to go invest resources in the right places they need for their business.
Yeah, because they're in the business of getting the audience to the site, not necessarily figuring out this other piece in which you have technology and services to really help leverage that. I love the fact that this is kind of, a constantly evolving field. So cookies are going away next year. the latest operating system on Apple no longer allows you to track, right, on cookies on phones, right, through social. So what is the next 12 to 24 months going to look like for advertising? How are they going to be able to get this this audience data in order to effectively reach people? What do you think is going to happen through the in the industry?
So I think the real answer is nobody has a clue.
Yeah.
Every day there's a new solution that's going to save the world is invented, and my personal opinion is there's not going to be a solution, but kind of a hybrid of multiple solutions that are out there, and we're actively testing a lot of these things. But there's a big unknown, because while you're correct in Apple has already kind of killed off the cookie. When I say it's getting deprecated next year, that's really specifically talking around like the Chrome browser, which still controls the majority of actual internet usage. So from an advertiser perspective, it's hard to also say, what is this cookieless world going to look like? Because right now, if you go to an advertiser and they have the option, which they do, to buy a cookie or not, buy a cookie, they're going to still leverage that, right? It's not only effective, it's what they know, it's what they build their systems around. So it's hard to kind of predict what that's going to look like. There's a lot of interesting solutions out there. And I think, everything from contextual advertising, which is coming back into vogue a little bit, to creating more kind of audience segmentations and profiles around general audiences. So it being a little less exactly people based, but more kind of general based. It's why I love this industry is you never sit still. And, if you do, you're going to be out of business. And you got to continue to kind of just test and see what's out there and kind of question everything and be open to testing everything at the same time.
Philosophically, do you agree with all this privacy and cookie blocking from a human perspective?
My personal opinion, I don't really like. I don't care. I guess that's maybe oversimplified, but I know a lot of people get kind of very worked up over, oh my God, they have all this data on me. And I get that as well. But from an advertising perspective, I'll say Instagram is probably the great example of it's one of the few places I've been online where I see an ad and I'll click and then go buy it. It's so dialed in. It's really good quality ads and it works, plain and simple. I'd much rather see an ad for, a new golf club, being a golfer, than for, a pair of women's shoes that obviously aren't intended for me. So I see the benefits of it. I also get, where people are concerned. And I think there's a lot of the lack of knowledge kind of in this also makes some things very scary. And on the other side, yes, people should obviously have a right if they don't want to be tracked or to have their, to have this going on. They should have an avenue out, if you will. But a big part of me, to being really honest with you, I think a lot of it's overblown.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I like getting served ads that I'm interested in. People like to buy stuff.
I agree. And I like being lazy on certain things. So like if I looked at something and it just pops up in front of me and I couldn't remember where it was, like that's a good experience to me. I personally enjoy that. But we live in a world where a lot of things either become, I think, politicized, or overblown. And the reality is the world is going that direction. And, us as a company just needs to be prepared for it.
Yeah. And I think you do have an option, right? You can always go on stealth mode or, VPNs or whatever. I don't know how much that affects the actual cookies and stuff on social, but I feel like if you want to not have your data tracked, that's an option.
I would agree.
So, I don't like doing generic kind of topics, but I do have to ask, where do you see generative AI on content creation as it pertains to advertising? Are you thinking about that at all? Especially around SEO keywords and.
I think it's a very interesting and real threat, and a huge, right? Like anything, could be a threat or a benefit depending on how it's used. I do think it's gonna change a lot in kind of the publishing world. There's no question about that. Where that plays out, I'm not sharp enough to know exactly how the cookie will crumble, but I think specific types of publishers will be impacted much more than others. And that's something that we think about as a business too, of even the type of websites we're going after. I think there's a lot of use recipes as an example. Something that even if it isn't from a content creation standpoint, if you want to go to ChatGPT and ask for a great, cookie recipe, it'll spit it out in a second, and it's just giving you the recipe. A lot of websites have created a lot of fluff around the actual recipe to get people to scroll and digest more ads, and then sometimes a ton of ads just popping up in your face. And I think when it's not a good user experience and people have to click an X here and there to finally get to what they're actually coming to the site for, I think that is going to have a major impact. But I think that can also be an opportunity for some of those people to realize, hey, like, yes, I do actually need to clean up this user experience because I do actually care about my user, or they're gonna find out these other ways to go, whether it's get that recipe or read different content. I think how people are going to use that will continue to innovate. I think it has so many applications that are going to create new industries and really be exciting. Publishing specifically, it's definitely going to shake some things up.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. It's like you see some pretty aggressive like recipe web pages, right? Like you just get destroyed. Or like, like book or movie recommendations, like you can get really hit up pretty hard with those ads.
And to be clear, that's the exact opposite of what we want to do when we're trying to monetize a website. We really do look at trying to, right? It's not about how much money you're making on that single page. It's what we refer to a lot as like revenue per session. So if you have a good user experience, that person's going to click through more pages, spend more time on site, and you can make more overall money. It doesn't need to be making all of your money on that first page because you just threw the entire kitchen sink of everything and really cheapen your brand where people don't want to come back to your website because it's such a bad experience.
Mm-hmm. Are you seeing any murmur around like linking ads to chat or like to LLM prompts? Are you seeing any like murmurs in that space yet?
Not so much. Not at least I haven't.
Yeah, I'm sure it's coming. But I think there's something to what you were saying is that at the end of the day, I feel like it's human nature to try to aggressively push monetization where it's unnatural. And you can probably get away with it for a little bit, but ultimately the customer experience will always win. And if a customer gets a better experience, GPTing a recipe versus going to a website, that website needs to evolve, right? And the consumer kind of usually always wins from that perspective.
Absolutely agree. And I think that's going to be one of the benefits from this is people will need to change what they're doing in I think a positive way for the actual, outcome for users.
So we all know that the industry is changing. You guys are firing all cylinders. I'm sure that you're more excited about the business than anybody else. I'm sure there's no shortage of challenges to overtake. I'm sure you're not bored. What are you looking forward to at Freestar? I know you brought in a professional. I guess you are a professional. But like a outside CEO, a hired gun. You being an unprofessional CEO, a professional CEO. Wears a tie, probably. Has like a lot of PowerPoint slides. But what's your role in the company now, and how do you foresee the company going forward?
To be clear, I don't think I've ever seen Kurt, our CEO, in a tie. He's much more of a plaid shirt and a boat shoe type of guy. So pretty laid back. So no ties over here. But no, part of bringing Kurt in is this is my third company now. I've never worked for anyone in my life, and I love kind of taking an idea from an idea to reality and starting to scale that. When you hit a certain amount of scale, both either employee and or revenue wise, there's a different level of systems and processes that need to be put into place that I quite frankly didn't have the experience with. And I think in my younger days, I was a little immature in thinking I could just take on the world. I didn't need help from anyone, and I could just go figure it out. And I got, I got somewhat far on my own, but obviously not nearly as far as I am today with kind of reaching out and finding that help. So I think that's been an amazing learning process for myself. And the amount, I think, thankfully, Kurt and I have an incredible relationship and great friendship we've built out of this now. But I think a lot of the times he'll probably calm me down when I need some calming down, and I'll fire him up when he needs to maybe be a little bit more aggressive. And there's a very good balance there. And I think if you can have a partnership with someone where, it can free you up to do what you do best. And for me, that's focusing a lot on the actual sales and business development, and also some of the teaching and training internally to kind of duplicate some of the success we've seen amongst, either new staff or younger staff that we're bringing in, maybe with not as much experience. I enjoy spending the time doing that. I don't like being in one-on-ones or looking at, better procedures to kind of run through different check marks and outlines. And I think that, you can only use your superpowers where you're really great. And for me, I've zeroed in on where I think I can add the most value to the company, but knowing that I have a partner in Kurt that can really fill in my weaknesses in a lot of ways. And they're his strengths. So it's been a great thing, not just for the company from a success standpoint, I think, but culturally speaking as well. We're very well aligned on, this is a company, but it's about having an environment where people feel safe. They're excited to come to work. They believe in the mission that we're really driving towards. And it's been fantastic. So I'm as excited as ever for, what we're doing. And I think this next stage of growth for us, I'm really excited for. I've never experienced, we're now at 200 employees. That's a global footprint of employees all over the world at this point. And, I'm really good at some of the things I do. And I'm also learning a ton as we continue to scale and continue to build this business forward. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity every single day.
Awesome. Well, this has been a really awesome pod, man. Thank you so much for taking me to school on this AdTech stuff. I really do think it's kind of interesting. What is the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
That's a great question. That I'm drawing a blank on right now of pure advice that I've gotten. I need to think on that for a minute. I hope we can edit this down. I think, I don't know if this is the greatest piece of advice, but the one thing that really sticks out to me, especially on the Freestar journey, is understanding that as the business scales, the people in the company scale with you. And that doesn't mean that they're bad people or they were bad hires. They might have helped get you to a certain point that you're at now, but are they the right people to get you to where you're going? And entering this company, I kind of thought, hey, if you've got an A player, they're going to be able to go figure this out no matter what. Sometimes people also hit a ceiling where, their skill set just isn't set up for that next stage of growth. And I think while I was told that before, I didn't really appreciate it until I lived it, and not getting too caught up in the personal emotional side either, because when you're in the trenches, especially as a startup and growing and scaling, some of those people are incredibly valuable. You build incredible friendships with them. And I think being able to have that open, honest conversation with them, if that time does come where it just doesn't feel like it's the right fit anymore, I think approaching that in the right manner and being really upfront with them. I've also learned those people know when they're uncomfortable and they're probably in over their head. And if you can part, either kind of get them on the right track or maybe in a different role, or if you need to part ways, they often come back saying, hey, thank you. I've landed in a better place for me today. And it really makes everyone feel better. So I think that's some of the advice I got, but I had to live through it to really understand what it meant.
Yeah. No, I feel like that's the case with most things with me, is that I get a lot of information that I hear, and I just been like, oh, that's what they mean. Once I just completely and utterly get punched in the face a couple of times, I just don't learn. I can't listen to anything. I just have to feel the pain, I guess.
I'm cut from the same cloth.
Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. If you guys like this episode, please subscribe. We launch an episode every Tuesday, and we're on all major platforms: Apple, YouTube, Spotify. If you like what you hear, please tell a friend, and we will see you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Capital Stack Podcast. Make sure to share this with someone you know that can benefit from this content. Remember to support this show by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. David Paul is the founder and general partner at DWP Capital. All opinions expressed by David and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of DWP Capital. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for decisions. David and guests may maintain positions in the securities discussed on this podcast.